Well, hello and welcome to the Profit Express. I'm Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every week so you can be prepared to win the battle for business. And as always, thanks so much for sharing some of your time with me today. And to make it worth your while, I look at getting great guests on the show just for you, the kind of guests that you can listen, learn, and earn from. Today's guest is going to be no exception. Today's topic, franchising. Now, why is it important? Well, franchising is hugely important for the economy. It equals about 3% of our GDP. It employs about, currently in 2021, I believe the number is about 8.4 million people. Now, what happened in 2020, we all know that the economy, the nation, the world took a giant hit, and franchising was a victim as well. They had a huge gut blow, if you will, where they lost 11% of their workforce due to the pandemic. 11%, that's huge. Now, for you listening to the show today, you also, in one way, shape, or form, as we all have, could have been impacted by the pandemic. With your career, perhaps you were forced to work from home. Perhaps you were forced into early retirement. Perhaps you were the victim of downsizing. Or maybe you're just a person who's been interested in and thinking about and contemplating franchising for quite some time now. Well, if you fall into one of those categories, your timing for today's show is perfect, because I want to have a conversation talking about franchising, how it was impacted last year, how it's going to potentially rebound in 2021. And then if you are thinking about it, what are some of the key things that you need to know before you make that big leap? Because whether it's going to be a big financial investment, which it certainly could be, it's also going to be a big investment of your sweat equity. And there's a lot of key things to consider to help you make the right decision when it comes to potentially getting involved in franchising. So if I am going to make it worth your time today, right here on the Profit Express, I'm going to have what I call my go-to source for franchising. And he's a certified franchise expert. He's author of best-selling book, Franchise Savvy, and he's the president of the Franchise Academy. He's Tom Scarda. He's been on the show before. Like I said, he's my go-to source for franchising. So it's a conversation I want to have. I want to help you have an awareness if you've been considering franchising. What do you need to be aware of? What are the kinds of questions you should be asking yourself? So to have a conversation with someone like Tom Scarda is a great value to you if you are in the realm of thinking about, or if you know somebody who's thinking about getting involved in franchising. So it's a real pleasure to have back on board the Profit Express none other than Tom Scarda. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Tim. So great to be here.
Well, listen, thank you so much for being on board. Like I said, franchising is a big factor in the economy, 3% of GDP. It's especially important for small businesses or those considering getting involved in business ownership. So, again, always great to have you on board. Now, I think it'd be kind of helpful for those listening. I kind of gave a little bit about, who you are. You're president of the Franchise Academy. But give us a little bit more of the details to your involvement in the world of franchising and how you work with franchisors and franchisees. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So what's cool is I used to work for the Long Island Railroad before I got into franchising. So I like to make the point that if I can do it, anybody can do it. I didn't have, the education. I didn't have the money. You don't need $1 million to get started. But I knew that I wanted to do something different. And one day, an old timer said to me when I was actually a conductor in the subway system, guy said
Mhm.
to me, "Hey, kid, this is a great job because you'll always have a shirt on your back." He said, "It'll never be a silk shirt, but at least you'll have a shirt." And I was like, "Wait a second, that sounds like mediocrity, man." And so I was
Right,
young. I was like 23, and I was like, "But who's wearing the silk shirts?" And I realized business owners were wearing the metaphorical silk shirts.
right.
So I want to be a business owner. I didn't know how. I learned that franchising is a business with training wheels. That's what I needed. And I ended up buying a franchise in 2000. I quit the railroad and left the pension behind. And I built my own business. It was a smoothie franchise. Within 5 years of buying it, I sold it and semi retired at 41 years old. Since 2005, I've been teaching people how to do exactly what I've done and also not make the mistakes I've made because I make mistakes. as well along the way.
So you walked away from a pension, which that takes some courage, right? And you get involved in a franchise, and within 5 years, you're able to make it successful enough that it warranted you selling it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But money's subjective. I wasn't making $1 million a year.
Right.
I wasn't a hedge fund manager. I was working for the railroad.
Right.
So I was able to replace that salary pretty quickly, and then just worked hard. Don't get me wrong; it's hard work,
Sure. No
but
doubt.
it's fulfilling. The satisfaction that comes from that is unparalleled, as far as I know.
Okay. So then, now, all right, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people in the workforce, people who are currently employees, maybe they've been forced to work from home and it's killing them. They hate it. Maybe they've been downsized. Maybe they've been, forced into an early retirement and they realize, hey, I got a lot more tread on the tire. I'm not, ready or willing
Hmm.
to retire. And they've contemplated, they thought about, business ownership.
Yeah.
And in a way, now I use it, the right franchise makes it a lot easier than creating a startup business of your own where you're starting from scratch. But let's talk about, because you've been doing this, you said, for 16 years. You've had, thousands of conversations. When somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, Tom, I've got some capital, I've got some time, I want to make this change, I want to become a business owner." What are some of the very first questions that you ask a potential investor, things that they have to consider about this next step?
The first question is why. You have to have your why in front of you,
Hmm.
because on
Hmm.
the bad days or when you're about to make that decision and all the what ifs come up, you got to have your why. You got to know why you're doing this. And if it's for just pure monetary reasons, I want to buy a Ferrari, then you're not going to be successful in the business.
Right.
If you have more altruistic things, could be as basic as I want to pay for my kids' college, I want to retire comfortably, I want to build a church or a synagogue, whatever it is,
Sure.
that's that's your why. That's more powerful, and so you need that first. The other thing is to not become infatuated with a franchise concept or a concept at all, for that matter. What I mean by that is
Mm.
if you love, French fries, it doesn't mean that you should buy something that's a French fries, franchise, whether it's Five
Mm.
Guys or McDonald's. What you should
Right.
do is find a business that will allow you to have the time and the money so you could eat your French fries when you want, but then you could actually have a life as well.
So it's interesting. So you talk about two of the keys that I'm getting here, which are critically important. You talk about why are you doing it? Okay, so that's number one. Then you talk about lifestyle. Because if you're getting it, I mean, we all know entrepreneurs that are, not in franchises and businesses can consume you.
Yes.
You have no life or you have very little life to speak of. And that's one
Right.
of the big pluses that I see. And I'm not a franchise owner, that they do offer, because it takes a lot of the groundwork and a lot of the foundation work out, where it's more of and I don't want to minimize it, more of a plug and play model, if you will. And then you talked about
Yes.
something that's
Absolutely.
interesting where, everybody knows franchises. And when you think franchises, you think McDonald's, you think Subway, you think 7-Eleven, and then there's, thousands of others, of course. But you said something, I want to talk a little bit more about this, Tom. Don't fall in love with the concept. And I think that might be one of the first things that people would fall in love with or would be attracted to a particular franchise that they themselves may frequent or be a customer of. If they love it, they say, "Oh, great, I want to have one of these franchises." But you're
Right.
saying don't go down the path of loving the concept. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, as an example, there was somebody locally here in Wantaw, where I
Hmm.
live,
Hmm.
and they opened up a franchise that I know pretty well. And I went in and was just, just kibitzing a little bit, just talking
Right.
to the owner, and didn't say who I was. And I just asked, "Why did you choose this particular franchise? I'm just curious."
Right.
And the lady said, "Oh my God, we love this kind of food. We love my kids, my husband, everybody. We love this." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And it was great tasting food. We walked out, and I turned to my wife and I said, "They're going to be out of business in less than a year." And sure enough, they were. And it was
Okay, so
because it
what
does
what made you think that, Tom?
because if you are buying a business because you love the food or
Right.
you love the service or I love the ambiance of this place and I can see myself doing this, you, when the times are bad, when you have a tough month or whatever, it's going to get old really fast. Or, in this person's case, they had younger children that were like
Mm,
teeny boppers,
mhm,
and
mhm.
they're not going to have more time with them. They're going to have a lot less time because they're going to be in the store nights and weekends. And
Right,
so you got to think about really what your role is going to be in the business
right.
before you choose the business. If you just go in and say, "Yeah, I've always loved, fish tacos," and you buy a fish taco franchise,
Right, right.
that's going to get old really fast. Not to mention, you have no control over the ingredients, and fish might get really expensive, and then your profit margin is going to shrink, and there's a whole
Right.
bunch of other things that I like to bring out when I talk to people.
So, so I'm sure as you and your wife have gone on and visited certain franchises, you no doubt maybe it's a hobby of yours, being able to spot when somebody's going to make it and somebody's going to fail, based on why they got started in the first place. Now,
Mhm.
let's go back to the pandemic. It's obviously affected all sectors of the economy in one way, shape, or form. Now that we're kind of talking
Right.
about, particular types of franchises, concepts, if you will, which
Mhm.
concepts actually benefited from the pandemic, and which ones were really crushed? What did you see?
Well, so it's really interesting. So now we have, as we speaking now, 18 months of data.
Right.
So just about everything shut down, in March of 2020.
Sure.
The
Sure.
things that did well were the concepts that were already connected to what the new norm was, which was ordering in.
Mm,
So if you were a franchise that already was doing that, or you were able to pivot quickly enough to get involved with the third party delivery services,
right.
you did just fine. Companies like Domino's and Pizza Hut, all these kind of businesses, even McDonald's for that matter, they increased 30% year over year from 19 to 20, and then 20 until now,
Right.
they're up 30% year over year. I mean, it's
Really.
incredible what's going on with those guys. But then there was ones that shut down and took a long time to kind of come back, which was things like in personal services, whether it was gyms or hair cutting places, eyelash extensions, nail joint, places like that.
Sure.
That was a pent up demand, and now they're up more than they were 2019, and because there's so much demand. Moreover, what I'm looking at now are the businesses that people are using as kind of a luxury because we're still not, getting on a plane and going to Europe.
Right. Right.
So, how do you treat yourself?
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of women that we're friends with that get these eyelash extensions, just like a thing, and becomes very addictive to them. And it's a great business. You'd be surprised. And once you have them, you can't not have them because they fall out and they got to get replaced every 90 days. And so it's a great
Wow.
built-in repeat business. It's like you wouldn't think about that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
those kind of things are killing it. And I could go on and on. So
Yeah, I'm
you
not
have to
big on
stop.
hair product franchises personally. I mean, that's just I wouldn't be a good consumer, but that's just me. So, I mean, listen,
But wait,
it's
Tim, I got to cut you off. I got to
yeah. Go
got you
ahead.
off
Go ahead.
because the reason I got to cut you off is that you make a great point. You could, even though you prefer to shave your head, you
Right.
could still own a Supercuts franchise. You cannot own a Supercuts franchise if you have a barber's license or a beautician's license. Think about that for a minute.
Wait. Hold on. Okay, so Supercuts, in I guess part of their agreement, whatever it is, you specifically they will not allow you to buy a franchise if you have a barber's license.
If you're a barber or a beautician,
Right.
they do not want you to own that business because think about it logically for a minute. What happens is you're in that business, it's doing fine.
Right.
You got somebody cutting hair for you. Sally calls in sick. No problem. I'll cut heads today. and you start cutting hair. At the end of the day, you realize, wow, I just saved myself $100. Maybe I don't need Sally, and now you just bought
Oh,
yourself a job. And the corporate entity is looking at the revenue stream that comes out of that on the royalties and all of, and the fees that you pay, and
sure,
now they're only
sure.
getting half of what they should be getting. So the business plateaus, and that's what typically happens in a regular mom and pop business, is that they get into it, and they might be great at what they do. They might be great bakers, great auto
Sure.
mechanics, great, you name it, but they're not good business owners. And so those are the people that you see are burned out. They're in that store 14 hours a day. On Sunday morning, they're there doing the books because they have no time to do it during the week. It's
Right.
crazy. But in a franchise, they teach you to scale it. And that there's really a lot of times not a barrier to entry in a
Right.
franchise, but there's a barrier to scalability. So they teach you how to scale and how to own multiple units and how to actually have a life, have time and money, which usually you have one or the other, but you don't have both. In a franchise, you can have both if you follow the system.
Wow. Honestly, that's like mic drop answer right there, Tom. That, and you've been on the show before. We've obviously talked franchises before. That's the first time I've heard you talk about supercuts. And as you describe it, it makes perfect sense. If you were the hair cutter and Sally calls in sick, you step in, great, maybe I can save money. But then you've gone back into the mentality of being a technician in the business, being an employee in the business, and it would, correct me if I'm wrong, then likely prohibit you from having the mentality to scale.
Yeah,
Now,
that's it.
yes. So listen, if you have one successful franchise, you could do well, but obviously the real opportunity is then repeating that level of success, 3, 4, 5, 20 times. I mean, that's when you can kill it in the business.
Right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, we're talking about, the concepts in franchising. Again, today's guest, Tom Scarda, franchise expert. He's author of the book Franchise Savvy, which, listen, I'm going to recommend that if you are considering franchising, certainly at least get the book, start thumbing through that. Tom's got lots of great ideas and strategies for you to consider if you are considering franchising. Now, we talked about the different concepts. I love the story of Supercuts you just shared. And it really goes back to it's a model and it's a process. And it's almost contrarian to what you hear so many business experts, so many people who have written books. You hear it and you see it and you read it on social media. Oh, follow your passion, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to, demoralize people for following their passion. And you could certainly create great success. But then it's really contrarian to what franchising is all about, right?
It really is. And so I like to clarify that, people always say, if you do what you love, if you work a job and you love what you do, you never work a day in your life,
Right.
which is absolutely true if it's a job. But a business is a lifestyle. So you really want to get into a business that's going to give you the time and the money so you could do what you
Right.
love to do, whatever your passion is. So, I always share the story. It was early in my consulting career. Two guys from Wall Street contacted me and they got laid off. And they were like, we know we want to be in a golf franchise. And
Right.
I was like, yeah, I could help you get into a golf franchise, but it's going to be retail. You're going to be selling golf clubs. You're not going to be, on the turn, having beers with your friends. And so you got to understand the reality of what you're talking about.
Right,
I
right,
said,
right.
how about if we go through the process and we try to figure out a business that'll give you all the time and the money so you could golf to your heart's content. And they begrudgingly said, okay, we'll do it, we'll try it, whatever. And so they ended up getting into a home healthcare franchise.
Really?
And I literally had dinner with these two guys. It's a shame. It's now 3 years ago. They bought this franchise like 15 years ago. But they're on Long Island, so I would
Yeah.
see them every once in a while.
Right.
And so when I saw them 3 years ago, they said the phone was ringing off the hook. They got the golf in Scotland. I mean, this is like, and so it warms my heart. That's what I do it for.
Right, right.
Because my service is free. I help people for free.
Yeah.
If they buy a franchise, I get a commission. Yeah, that's great. My wife loves expensive things, so I do need the commission. But but I do it because I want to be able to help people do what I did, get to a point where you could do things with your business that you wouldn't be able to do at a job. And,
Right.
and that's where I get my satisfaction from.
So again, you really have to have a direct conversation. You have to be real with these people. That's obviously what you do. That's part of your expertise. You have the franchise background yourself, so you understand exactly what they're going through, and you have to kind of walk them off the ledge of jumping into what they think is their dream and their passion, and look at something very objectively. Remove the emotion. I mean, that to me seems
Right.
like it's absolutely pivotal in process. No.
You got to have an open mind. Don't be emotional about it. The
Right.
other thing that
Right.
people do is they feel like, if it's not about the passion, then it's about their skills. Well, I'm an accountant. I'm a CPA, so I should buy an H&R Block,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's the last thing they should buy.
Right.
They don't need an H&R Block. They're already
Right. Right.
doing it.
Right.
What they need is a business that will allow them to get to whatever their goals are, whatever it might be, whether it's, paying for kids' college or early retirement, that kind of stuff. Then the right franchise will get them there. But if you're already kind of doing it, that's a big mistake.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
most likely you're not going to be awarded a franchise license anyway, because
Right.
they don't want you to be in it and start doing the work and not augmenting the business, not building it and scaling it.
So listen, Tom. I mean, it just hit me while we're doing the show. Now, maybe I'm perfect for a hair care franchise. I never
You,
considered it.
you Hey, if you're a vegetarian, I got a great meat franchise for you too. You could-
I love. Well, it's just talking business and what makes sense. These are the kind of conversations, and that's why I love having you on. I thank you for having you on because, you know what, people are going to talk to who they're going to talk to. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their family. Oh yeah, you'd be great doing this, great doing that. You're objective. You don't know them. You're guiding them down the path. Now, listen. One thing I want to talk before I let you go. Um, what are some warning signs, some red flags that potential franchisees, the ones who are investing in the franchise, should be aware of from the franchisors of the world? What should they look at? What are some, bad
this is so
signs?
key, Tim. This is so key. What people don't understand is that just because it's a franchise doesn't mean that it's a good business model. There
Right.
is no rules, there's no regulations or laws that say what business could be a franchise. Anyone could be a franchise. You file the paperwork with the Federal Trade Commission,
Mm-hmm.
and you open up shop and you try to sell franchises.
Right.
The Federal Trade Commission doesn't care if your franchise makes money. They don't care if you support your franchisees. They just want to know that you're not a terrorist organization laundering money or a pyramid scheme. Other than that, it's buyer beware.
Good luck. Right.
So you got to really know who you're getting involved with.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things to look out for, and that's why we screen the companies before we would present them to somebody. We want to know that there's 8 criteria that we look for specifically, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's of course outstrings from all of that. But
Right.
we want to make sure that number one, they have 25 franchise owners open for a year or more, successful and happy.
Track
Then
record. Good.
we
Yep.
and then we call every single one of them, and I say that the franchisee who's buying the franchise should do the same thing before they spend a dime.
Okay.
Then when they talk to when they do that, they should tell the franchisor, I'm going to call everybody. And if they say, no, no, you don't have to, here, just call these 3 guys, red flag.
Yep.
They should allow,
Yeah.
by law, by decree from the FTC, you are allowed to call anyone and everyone.
Right.
And then every franchise has a prospectus. They call it the franchise disclosure document. In there, they list anyone that has sold, transferred, or gone out of business in the past 2 years. And if there's a lag, there's usually a year lag. It's 3 years, and you could call these people that were in the business and failed, and
Right.
find out why.
Oh yeah.
Make
Oh
sure
yeah.
that you're not like them. It's the only investment that I know of where you could call the end user. It's like if you're buying a stock, you can't call up people that bought the stock and say, "So how'd you do over the past 6 months?"
That's a great
It's
point. That is an
yeah,
excellent point. I love that.
yeah, it's true. It's the most transparent investment you could make, as far as I know.
Right. Right. Right.
In this country,
Yeah.
and, and
It's
and we want it to be like that.
It's due diligence. Call successful ones who are in the business now, track record, and then also, hey, listen, you went belly up, you failed. Why? Help me to understand.
Yeah,
That's a huge benefit. That's
absolutely.
fantastic.
It's and it's like diagnosing a football team, right? You got 20% of the players, you know their name, they're in the paper on Monday morning. You got
Right.
60% of the players, they're fine, they're making the plays, they show up, everything's great. And you
Right.
got 20% that are sitting on the bench. What's going on with them? Right?
That's a great point. Listen, one last question for you. I want to ask this because everything that's going on, we have to talk about this for a moment, at least. Everybody knows about and has been impacted by directly and indirectly the labor shortage, and a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of franchises, as you know, rely on labor. What are you advising people? What are you seeing regarding that?
So right
And
now, there are two things. One is um, you could look for a franchise that has very limited staff, and
okay.
there's quite a few. So that's one way. You
Hmm.
could look, and so that's one A because I said there's two things. So one A is you're looking possibly for staff that might have some kind of credentials to do the work, like a
Okay.
massage therapist, a hair cutter,
Sure.
those kind of people. And so those kind of people typically are older, a little bit
Hmm.
older than a McDonald's worker, if you will.
Okay.
Um, the kids, and so they have a car payment, they might have a mortgage or a rent or something. So they show up, they want to work, they have to work. Um, and then the other thing is there's several franchises that are kind of building their own in-house sort of recruiting centers for their
Oh,
franchisees.
okay.
So when you buy, XYZ franchise, they're going to say, okay, in Toledo, we have these people that have submitted their resume. You could interview them and hire a couple of people to get started.
So the franchisors realize, obviously, you can't hide from the problem of the labor shortage. So they're now becoming that much more involved in helping potential franchisees get the people they need.
Yeah. Like you said, like 11% of the work staff kind of went away during the
Yeah.
pandemic,
Yep.
but we have outdone the numbers threefold than what's happening in the country right now. So
In the
we're
rebound. Yeah.
about the rebound is we're about 75% back on the staffing right now.
Awesome. Listen, this has been, I would expect nothing less but a great conversation from Tom Scarda, of course. Um, Franchising can be a great opportunity if you do it the right way. And as you know, can be a disaster if you don't get involved in the right franchise. So, Tom, people who are listening, who are watching, they want to, pick your brain, learn more about you. How do they follow you? How do they get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, my website is thefranchiseacademy.com. Use the word the. So it's thefranchiseacademy.com. On there, you can find my books, free downloads, free downloadable books. I also have a brand new online course. It's about 8 hours. Everything that I've ever said about franchising is in this course. So you
Right.
could actually learn about franchising on your own with me on video. It's hours and hours of video, and it comes with a 108-page workbook to follow along. That's
Sure.
on the website, and a podcast. The Franchise Academy podcast available where every podcast is heard these days.
Awesome. Tom, listen, thanks so much for sharing some of your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Tim. It was always great as usual.
You
Really
got it.
appreciate it.
You got it. My pleasure. And again, that was Tom Scarda, author of Franchise Savvy and president of the Franchise Academy. Um, he's a great resource. And like I said, choosing the right franchise could be a fantastic experience, and choosing the wrong one could be an utter disaster that you want to avoid. So, as always, listen to episodes just like today's with Tom that download every Wednesday. You can follow us on iTunes, Spotify. Follow me on Instagram at The Profit Express, on Twitter at Profit_Express, Facebook as well, the Profit Express page, and be there each and every Wednesday so together we can win the battle for business. Until next time.